Coming up on Network Africa. At least 30 people killed in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo in attacks by gunmen. At least 45 killed as rain and mudslides cause havoc in South Africa's Durban. Plus, Botswana detects new COVID Omicron subvariant. Hello and a warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shibowale. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the Red Cross says at least 30 people have been killed during 2 days of attacks by gunmen. It happened in Ituri province, which, along with neighboring North Kivu, is under an official state of siege, an effort by the government to stop the attacks by dozens of armed groups. The attacks are thought to have been carried out by the Allied Democratic Front, ADF, one of the deadliest rebel groups operating in the region. Homes were torched and property looted. In December, more than 1,000 Ugandan soldiers crossed into DR Congo for what was meant to be a joint military operation to defeat the ADF. But despite promises of progress, the group has continued to carry out frequent attacks on vulnerable communities. And 5 soldiers in Benin Republic have been killed by suspected militants in the Penjari National Park in the north. The north of the country has seen an increase in jihadist activity and recruitment because of its proximity to conflict zones in neighboring Burkina Faso, Niger and Nigeria. In 2019, a local guide was killed and 2 French citizens were kidnapped. They were subsequently released. There have also been at least 3 militant attacks on the army in the northern region since November last year. And over in South Africa, authorities say at least 45 people have been killed in floods caused by days of heavy rainfall in the coastal province of KwaZulu-Natal. Many people are still missing and emergency services are searching for survivors. According to reports, some in the city of Durban were standing on rooftops awaiting rescue. Key roads across the city are shut and mudslides have destroyed many homes.
We try to run away, my young children, my young boy. There's cabbage, the soil, it's gone over on top. Now we try to take the children down on the soil. Lucky we found it. I got nowhere to go now. I got no house, I got no nothing. Yes, my family is there by my neighbors. We tried to give me the place to sleep last night. We never slept last night. The situation is very, very bad. I don't know where we're going to sleep now.
That's other stories now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has reached out to the African Union for support against Russia's aggression and has requested to address the Continental Organization. Mr. Zelensky called Senegalese President Macky Sall on Monday, and their conversation touched on an AU statement in February that called for an immediate ceasefire and a return to negotiations. African unions have showed this unity in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Senegal was among 17 countries that abstained from a vote at the UN on a resolution demanding Russia ends its military operations in Ukraine. An international affairs analyst, Paul Ejime, joins us now for more on this. Mr. Ejime, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Teniola. Thank you for having me.
So, only 10 African countries backed the suspension of Russia from the UN Security Council last week. 24 abstained from the vote and 9 voted against the move. Why is Africa seemingly staying on the fence in this conflict?
So I think it is in the best interest of Africa really to not to take sides in this fight. I mean, there is African saying that when you see two people fighting, as a third person, you try to bring peace. You try to make peace and not begin to side with any side. But look at it this way: Africa has always done under the OAU. They had the non-aligned movement. You know, when we had the Cold War between the two superpowers. And yet again, it's the superpower policy, politics that is playing out. And Africa should carry, not plunge itself into this matter, because the impact might, if you decided with America, the EU, and others, because they are getting support, what happens is that is that the correct? Is that the side that is would be said to be right in this case? You decided with Russia. Is Russia right to have invaded Ukraine? No. But what is happening is that instead of taking sides, I think Africa will do well to maintain a middle ground so that it can, after the end of the war or the conflict, it can still negotiate. It can still get leverage from both sides of the warring parties. So I think it is not right, in my opinion, for Africa really to take sides in this conflict.
But the refusal by some African countries has generated some criticism. Some analysts have raised issues of territorial integrity, tying Russia's invasion of Ukraine to colonial domination of African states. Do you think this puts countries like South Africa, who abstained from this vote, on the wrong side of history?
No, I think what is happening in South Africa is actually the one playing this neutrality card. To say, listen, when two cousins are fighting, Ukraine and Russia, they are supposed to be neighbors. You don't poke your nose into it and begin to side with one and then say, okay, come on, like the EU or NATO is doing. I think NATO is not even helping matters by this. Starting what an Irish parliamentarian called using more war to stop a war. You cannot do it that way. There is negotiation. There is dialogue. I think Africans should be among those, like the UN, trying to mediate, trying to find a way of getting the two countries together so that there is peace. Because even after killing, look at the thousands of people that are dying. Look at the destruction that is going on. And look at what the sanctions are now causing. You know, every part of the world is feeling the consequence. Is that what we want? Let negotiation and dialogue be the one that not just every day they wake up, Europe will wake up with another sanction. This is not to justify the invasion. But after the invasion, what happens? And by the way, this is not the first invasion in modern history. America and NATO, they have invaded countries before, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, even in Africa. And by the way, again, look at the frenzy with which everybody is now talking about Ukraine. What happens to the many conflicts in Africa? Why has the world not come to Africa's rescue? There are conflicts that have been raging for ages. Why hasn't there been that kind of this kind of momentum, this kind of concern to end those conflicts? They shouldn't put Africa on the line or make an African scapegoat. I think African countries should do their best to remain neutral. And then I think the statement is good. Let the two parties come to the negotiating table and not take sides blindly, because Africa might suffer. You know, Africa is vulnerable. You can suffer. It doesn't matter who wins or who loses the conflict.
And just to bring in what South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said last week, he blasted the UN Security Council as outdated and in dire need of an overhaul. Has this war exposed the UNSC's ability to fulfill its mandate of maintaining international peace and security?
Well, I think if one saw what has happened in Iraq, in Israel, in Lebanon, in Afghanistan, and Libya, there is no saying that the UN needs some reform. Look at what is happening. The powers that have veto, they have veto status at the UN Security Council. They will not let anything pass. And so UN has become, if you like the word, weakened. It has been weakened. One will remember that even during the Iraq War, the former, now late Secretary General Kofi Annan was doing, some troubleshooting, even going to Iraq, trying to persuade America and the Israelites that Saddam Hussein did not have, there was no weapons of mass destruction. But they went ahead and went there to bomb. Look at today, Iraq is a failed state. Libya is a failed state. Afghanistan is also a failed state. So, well, the UN is as strong as its members, its weakest member, or is the strongest member. There are those who are just there. The National Assembly, General Assembly, keeps giving resolutions that are non-binding. The decision stops at the table of the Security Council. The 5 of them that wield, veto power will not allow anything to pass. So that is where the situation, that is where the problem lies. So long as they leave these countries with the veto power, they will never allow, they play their own, it's a case of enlightened self-interest. Everybody protecting their sphere of influence. And that is what is happening now between the U.S. The U.S. that is now leading the fight against Russia because of Ukraine will never allow, permit the kind of thing that Russia is also complaining against. Having nuclear power or, a strong, say, European power near Cuba. Remember the Cuban War? Remember what happened? It was because of the same thing. America will not allow it. But that is not to say that Libya is justified. But let us look for peace. The world can ill afford this kind of thing. Look at the economic problem that COVID has caused. And they're now adding this to it. It is not only Russia, it is not only Putin that is going to suffer. The rest of the world, that is where the NATO and America and the EU, they should now look at it and see what is the end game. Is it to, suffer the rest of the world because of this? Something that can be negotiated? Why are they every time talking about more wars to end war? It doesn't work that way. I think Africa is right, in my view. South Africa is to be seeking peace and staying in the middle course and not delving into somebody's. It's like somebody would be, they say you are drinking Panadol for somebody else's headache.
All right, then, international affairs analyst, Mr. Paul Ejime, thank you so much for your thoughts on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And still on the impact of the Ukraine war, Italy's Prime Minister Mario Draghi has announced a major gas deal with Algeria, which promises to reduce his country's heavy reliance on Russian imports. Under the deal, from this autumn, increased gas supplies will be sent through the Transmed undersea pipeline, which links Algeria to Italy via Tunisia. Italy buys the vast majority of its natural gas from overseas, with 40% of its supplies coming from Russia. Speaking while on a visit to the Algerian capital, Mr. Draghi said his government has signed a preliminary agreement on energy cooperation with the country. And some updates from the COVID-19 pandemic now. The Botswana Health Ministry says it has detected a new COVID Omicron subvariant. The infected are currently being monitored to establish more information on the potential impacts of the disease and its severity. The new subvariant, designed as Omicron BA4 and BA5, has already been detected in 3 other countries and on 4 people in Botswana. The 4 people were fully vaccinated and had been experiencing mild symptoms. So far, no conclusions have been made to establish whether this subvariant is more transmissible than the known Omicron variant. This happens as the World Health Organization announces it's tracking a few dozen cases of the 2 new subvariants of the highly transmissible Omicron strain to assess whether they are more infectious or dangerous. And still to come on the program. Ethiopia lifts ban on Boeing 737 MAX after 20... Thanks for staying with us. Still on the COVID-19 pandemic, the global lead coordinator for COVID-19 vaccine country readiness and delivery has told the UN Security Council that rapid action must be taken to accelerate vaccination. Speaking to the council members via video link, Mr. Ted Chaiban says the window of opportunity is closing and the world risks failing on vaccine equity.
In 2022, we must take the rapid action needed to accelerate vaccination. The window of opportunity is gradually closing. We risk losing the momentum and failing on vaccine equity. The COVID-19 vaccine delivery partnership is focused, amongst others, on 34 countries which were at 10% or less full vaccine coverage and face the biggest challenges to increasing vaccination coverage. The goal is to vaccinate all adults and adolescents, starting with the elderly, healthcare and other frontline workers, and those with underlying health conditions who are at the highest risk from COVID-19. The next 6 months are critical. More than 11.1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered globally, and 124 of the 194 WHO member states have vaccinated more than 40% of their population, and 51 countries have reached more than 70% of their population. However, this is only 11% in low-income countries. 83% of the population in WHO's Africa region and 51% in its Eastern Mediterranean region, which includes Afghanistan, remain unvaccinated. In humanitarian settings, from Afghanistan to Yemen, addressing low vaccination coverage rates requires integrating with humanitarian priorities, working with humanitarian partners, and a sustained country-by-country effort to identify and overcome the primary obstacles to increasing vaccination rates among the populations affected by natural disasters, conflict, and socioeconomic instability.
And also addressing the UN Security Council, Dr. Emmanuel Ojwang, Health and Nutrition Coordinator at CARE South Sudan, called on the international community to ensure unhindered humanitarian access to people in need on the African continent and beyond.
First, to ensure safe and unhindered humanitarian access to all people in need. This is essential to create the enabling environment for equitable vaccine delivery in conflict, post-conflict, and humanitarian settings across Africa and beyond. Second, ensure that COVID vaccine costing models and budgets cover all aspects of delivery and reflect the real-world costs of rolling out the vaccines to the last mile. This must include investments in frontline healthcare workers, community outreach, monitoring, and logistics.
Mr. Shaiban.
And back here in Nigeria, it's cherry news for the country's pharmaceutical sector, as Nigeria will start producing COVID-19 and other vaccines locally before the end of this year. This is according to the Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration, NAFDAC. The news comes as Nigeria has just received maturity level 3 from the World Health Organization, which will give NAFDAC the opportunity to produce locally made vaccines to battle the COVID-19 pandemic.
We are working day and night to make sure that by the end of the year, we will start manufacturing of vaccine. That doesn't mean we will produce completely developed vaccine. The minister has gone through different pathways, or is going through different pathways to ensure that this happens. But the government also has a PPP arrangement with biovaccines, or with May and Baker, rather, to form biovaccines. The government has 49%, May and Baker has 51%. The goal is to be able to manufacture vaccines, and this arrangement started long time ago. So it is not just COVID-19 pandemic. But to answer your question, we are talking of local manufacturing of vaccine now being possible because NAFDAC got ML3. Without that, we will not be able to manufacture a vaccine.
And away from the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ethiopian aviation regulator has allowed Boeing 737 MAX airplanes back into its airspace 3 years after one of its national carrier jets crashed shortly after takeoff from Addis Ababa. All 149 passengers and 8 crew members aboard the Ethiopian Airlines flight from the Ethiopian capital to Nairobi, Kenya, died. The Ethiopian Civil Aviation Authority says it lifted the ban after being satisfied with improvements in the plane's design and the airline's pilot training program. The U.S. Federal Aviation and Administration cleared the planes to resume flights in November 2020, but however ordered compulsory pilot training and modification on flight computer. And now finally on the program, Ghana's only glassblower says is on a mission to reduce the country's glass waste and wasteful imports. Michael Tete built his own glassblowing studio in 2012 from scrap metal and clay bricks, and today produces dozens of pieces each week from recycled TV screens, window panes and soda bottles. Take a look.
Michael Tete, Ghana's only professional glassblower, clenched his teeth as he gripped a red-hot ball of molten glass. His burned and blistered hands bare against the steaming stack of wet newspaper he used to protect them. The 44-year-old toiled in the heat of scrap metal kilns burning at nearly 1,500 Celsius, loaded with melted window paint, TV screens and soda bottles. He would soon transform into elaborate vases swirling with psychedelic color. Some become red vases with streaks of black, others green pitchers, and some clear everyday bottles.
Glass that I learned in the bead making, it became like my passion. It's like my heart. So all the time I want to blow glass. And glass is a wonderful work. You see how you are working with the glass. It's expand, and it's like life. You see, yes, it's like life. It is expand. Life also expand. It's like a journey. Yes, you go from one after the other. Yes, so I love glass, and the glass is beautiful.
Tete's strict use of recycled materials, which he collects from scrap yards and landfills in the capital, Accra, is part of a stated mission to reduce Ghana's glass waste and what he considers wasteful imports. He envisions a Ghana free of foreign glass, having channeled its glass bead-making tradition into a modern, multifaceted industry. While some private companies recycle their glass, Tete says majority of Ghana's glass waste ends up either in landfills or scattered throughout the nation's streets, posing a safety hazard.
We don't have a collection process, and we don't want the broken glasses to be flowing around like that, or they will dump it in a landfill. And if we are using recycle, we can get money. Yes, as we want to recycle, recycle is cheap. You get, sometimes I buy the material from Accra, but it's not too expensive for me to buy, so that I can be able to use it, and after using that I can pay my staff.
Janice Ofei, 28-year-old and one of 8 women who Tete has taught, said that having the hot shop in town has been a game changer for some of Odumase Krobo's young people. It's provided both a work opportunity and a creative outlet for people who had neither.
We are hoping maybe support will come and establish our business so that we can employ more youth. In our community, there is no, the youth, they don't have work to do. They are smoking, they are blah, blah, blah. So if we establish this job, they will get more work to do and they will not sit down in the house.
The team's work can be found in boutique shops in Ghana and Ivory Coast and has appeared in European and American art galleries.
Beautiful stuff. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.